Hello. If you're visiting for the first time, it's fantastic to have you here. And if you're a returning listener, welcome back. This video features mostly true, scary stories with the sound of gentle rain in the background. If you're looking for something to help with sleeplessness, anxiety, or stress, you're in the right place. If you enjoy the stories, I'd be grateful if you'd subscribe. Thank you for being here. Now, let's begin. Are you ready for a chilling adventure that will send shivers down your spine? I have something special just for you. Stay tuned because I will take you through some real-life horror stories that will haunt you forever. But before we dive in, if you're listening in from somewhere exciting, drop a comment below and let me know where you are. And don't forget to subscribe for more spine-tingling tales. Also, I have a weight loss secret that you won't want to miss. Imagine shedding those extra pounds without lifting a finger, even while you sleep. Sounds amazing, right? Click the link in the description below to learn more about this incredible dietary supplement designed to help you achieve your weight loss goals effortlessly. Now, let's plunge into the darkness together. I remember back when I was just a curious kid who loved to explore the world around me. One chilly night, my friends and I gathered around the campfire, telling spooky stories beneath the starry sky. The trees swayed with the wind, and every rustle sent chills down my spine. I decided to share my own experience. It started when my family moved into an old house that whispered secrets. The locals warned us to stay away from the basement, but curiosity got the best of me. One night, while everyone was asleep, I tiptoed down the creaky stairs, heart pounding in my chest. The darkness felt alive as I reached the bottom, the air thick with dust and dread. Suddenly, I noticed a flickering light coming from a corner. I shuffled closer, my breath quickening. There, in the dim glow, an old mirror stood against the wall. Its surface was cracked, but what caught my eye was the reflection. Instead of my own face staring back at me, there was a girl, a pale, sad little girl with hollow eyes and tangled hair. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Just then, I heard footsteps behind me. I spun around, and the basement door slammed shut. Panic surged through me. It felt like something was watching, something sinister lurking in the shadows. I pressed myself against the mirror, hoping to blend into the cold glass. My heart raced as the footsteps grew louder, pounding towards me. In a flash, the little girl in the mirror suddenly smiled, and I felt an icy chill wrap around me. I couldn't breathe, couldn't scream. The footsteps stopped, and I dared to glance back. The basement was empty, but a whisper echoed in my ears, sending shivers down my spine. "Find me," it said, and my body froze. As the whispers filled the air, I realized the old house held secrets I was not meant to uncover. I scrambled back to the stairs, desperate to escape the haunting chill of the basement. But as I reached for the doorknob, it wouldn't budge. I was trapped, enveloped in a darkness that felt alive. This was just the beginning of my terrifying journey. I was caught in a web of horror that would unravel with each passing day, leading me deeper into a nightmare I never wanted to face. Would I ever find out who the girl in the mirror was? And would I be able to escape the grip of the haunted house? The answers lingered just out of reach, waiting to pull me under, as I stood alone in the echoing silence. I pushed against the door with all my strength, but it felt like a heavy wall pressing back. My heart thudded louder with every passing second. Just as I thought hope was slipping away, a sudden creak filled the silence. It was the sound of the door slowly opening, as if something unseen had decided to let me out. I stumbled through, breathless and cold, not daring to look back at the basement again. Back upstairs, the air felt heavier, almost thick like syrup. I ran to my room, locking the door behind me. I thought I could finally breathe, but the memory of the girl haunted my mind. Why was she trapped? What did she want from me? Sleep felt impossible, and the shadows in my room danced menacingly, teasing my imagination. As the days passed, the unease grew. I started to hear voices whispering at night, soft and urgent, calling me from the dark corners of my room. It was as if the house was alive and wanted to share its eerie stories. Each night, I tried to ignore them, but my thoughts were stained with fear. I would lay in bed, frozen, unable to move, listening to the whispers that seemed to come from the walls themselves, telling me that I hadn't seen the last of the girl. One fateful evening, I decided to face my fear. Armed with only a flashlight and my trembling courage, I crept down again to the basement. This time, the air was colder, sending chills straight to my bones. The flickering light was there again, glowing ominously. I steeled myself and approached the mirror, feeling its cold surface beckoning me closer. When I looked into the mirror, the girl was there once more, but this time her expression was different. She looked pained, her eyes shimmering with tears that seemed real. "Help me," she whispered, but the voice was barely a breath, ethereal like a fading echo. Trembling, I reached out, not knowing what I expected. But as soon as my fingers touched the glass, a surge of energy shot through me. Suddenly, the basement rattled. The lights blinked, and the ground shook beneath my feet. The girl's eyes widened in fear as she mouthed, "Run." Spinning around, I saw shadowy figures creeping closer, darker than the night itself. They swirled around me, their whispers rising into a cacophony of screams. I turned back to the mirror, but it would not reflect my fear. It was now showing an impossible scene of other children trapped inside, their faces twisted in despair. With my heart racing, I bolted up the stairs, each step echoing in the hollow silence. The house seemed to groan as I ran, almost angry at my escape. I burst into my room, slamming the door and collapsing against it. My breath came in quick gasps as I pressed my ear to the wood, hoping to hear nothing. But the voices were louder now, demanding, urging me to go back. "You must find her," they insisted, filling my head with doubt and dread. I buried my face in my hands, fighting against the growing terror. What did this girl want? Could I help her? Would I be putting myself in danger again if I did? Days turned into a blur of confusion and fear. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. The whispers followed me, unsettling and persistent. I tried to share my experience with my family, but they brushed it off as childish imagination. I was alone with my burden, and the more I resisted, the stronger the pull became. The girl in the mirror was part of me now, and I felt an invisible bond that I couldn't break. Finally, one stormy night, lightning illuminated my room, casting eerie shadows that danced ominously. I grabbed my flashlight, heart racing, and made my way to the basement one last time. The storm roared outside, but inside it was silent, as if the house itself was holding its breath. As I stepped down the stairs, the light flickered, illuminating dust that floated like spirits around me. I reached the mirror, bracing myself for what I might see. The girl stood there, a twisted smile on her face, but this time it felt sinister, almost mocking. I gasped as the shadows around me grew thicker, swirling as though they were alive. "You shouldn't have come back," she hissed, and I felt icy breath against my neck, freezing me in place. Panicking, I tried to turn, but the shadows grabbed at me, pulling me closer to the mirror. I screamed, but no sound left my lips. The house was absorbing my voice, echoing it into silence. The girl pointed, and I followed her gaze, horrified to see reflections of the other terrified children merging with my own. "Help us," they cried, their voices blending into a haunting choir that echoed around me. The mirror rippled, transforming into an indistinct portal, and I felt the ground beneath me give way. I was falling, slipping into a dark abyss filled with whispers, secrets, and fear. I reached for the edge, clawing at the space, desperate to escape. But the shadows tightened their grip, dragging me closer to the dark fate that awaited. Just when I thought it was over, I heard a scream, my own scream, cut through the darkness. Screaming echoed in my ears, a chilling sound that seemed to come from all around me, and yet from deep within myself. I felt my heart pounding harder, like a frantic drum urging me to escape. The darkness that surrounded me grew thicker, wrapping around me like a cold blanket, muffling my senses. The fear sunk into my bones, making it hard to think, hard to breathe. Suddenly, I was pulled into the depths of the mirror, and the world flipped upside down. I stumbled onto a cold, damp floor that felt alive under my feet. My instincts kicked in, pushing me to look around, but the scene was unlike anything I could have imagined. Shadows danced on the walls, flickering like candles while shapes shifted and morphed in the corners of my vision. I was no longer in my home. I was in a dark, twisted version of the basement, filled with whispers that curled around me like smoke. "Help me!" The voice called again, but this time it radiated from all directions, echoing off the walls until I couldn't figure out where it was coming from. My pulse raced as I scanned the darkness, searching for the source. The air felt electric, tinged with an overwhelming sense of dread. Every instinct screamed at me to flee, but the pull of whatever was in the shadows kept me rooted in place. I took a step forward, the coldness of the floor sending a shiver up my spine. As I moved deeper, I began to see faces appearing in the walls, trapped within the very surface as if the house itself had absorbed their screams. It was horrifying, their mouths open wide in silent cries, eyes filled with despair. My own reflection appeared too, but it looked different, distorted as if fear had twisted my image into something monstrous. A gust of wind swept through, pressing me back against the wall. I felt icy fingers brush my skin, paralyzing me in terror. "You shouldn't have come here," a voice whispered close to my ear, sending chills racing down my spine. I turned to see the girl from the mirror standing there, but she looked different. Her eyes were darker, sunken deep with sorrow and malice. "You're here to join us?" "No!" I gasped, my voice cracking as I stumbled away from her. But every direction I turned only revealed more of the nightmare. The shadows now gathered closely, a swirling tide of darkness, clawing at my legs to pull me in. I fought back with everything I had, but I felt so weak, so helpless. The weight of despair dripped down like rain, encasing me in a fog of hopelessness. As I turned again to find an escape route, I caught glimpses of other children trapped just like me. They reached out, their desolate faces pleading for help, but their hands passed through the solid surface of the walls, completely unable to break free. I wanted to cry for them, but my voice was lost in the tempest of whispers that drowned out my thoughts. The darkness advanced, and I could feel its haunting breath against my skin. "Stay with us," the shadows hissed, pulling tighter like a noose. Forever. A surge of determination washed over me. I couldn't let this be the end. I couldn't let myself be consumed by the very darkness that sought to collect lost souls. With a primal yell, I broke free from the shadows, sprinting toward what looked like a beam of light flickering in the distance. I ran with every ounce of strength I could muster, dodging and weaving through the suffocating darkness while whispers clawed at my mind, begging me to return. "You can't leave us. Stay." As I approached the light, I saw it was not just a light. It was a portal, shimmering like a rippling surface of water. I leaped toward it, the dark figures grasping at my feet. Just before I reached the light, I turned back one last time, looking at the girl and all the others. "I will come back to help you," I cried, somehow hoping they could hear me as I hurled myself through the portal. The world suddenly flipped again, and I landed back in my basement with a heavy thud. I gasped, heart racing, feeling the familiar air on my skin, but the echoes of that dark place stayed wrapped around me, a lingering reminder of my brush with the unknown. I could hear the whispers still swirling in my head, relentless and unnerving. Drenched in sweat, I stumbled to my feet, trying to shake off the remnants of the dreamlike terror that had gripped me. I needed to warn my family, but deep down, I felt the darkness was still with me, biding its time, waiting for the perfect moment to strike again. No matter how much I tried to forget, the faces of the children and the haunting words echoed in my mind. But I knew I had to go back, to find a way to rescue them from their despair. As I made my way to the staircase, the house creaked ominously around me, almost in response to my thoughts. I paused, every nerve in my body screaming to go outside and forget everything, but I felt tethered to those souls who needed help. The decision weighed heavily on me. Was I strong enough to face the darkness again? The shadows within the walls seemed to whisper to me, teasing me with the possibility of power, the temptation of joining them in their eternal night. I pushed the thought away, knowing deep down that they were nothing but lies trying to trap me once more. When I reached the door, I took a deep breath. I couldn't go back to my old life like nothing had happened. I had seen too much, felt too much of their pain. I needed to prepare myself for the reality of what lay ahead, knowing, somehow, I had been chosen as their only hope. Determined to uncover the truth, I decided to gather some supplies for my next visit to the basement. Maybe I needed something that could help me confront the darkness that haunted those walls. I rummaged through old boxes in the attic, finding a dusty lantern that looked like it hadn't been used in years. Its glass was cracked, but it still sparked with experience waiting to be unleashed. I held it up, imagining how the warm light could chase away the shadows lurking in the corners. As I descended back into the basement, the air felt charged, thick with anticipation. I could feel the weight of the whispers pressing in on me like a heavy fog, every creak of the wooden stairs making my heart race. I recalled the portal and the faces trapped behind the mirror, their hollow eyes begging for help. I couldn't ignore it. I had to go back and find a way to break the curse that held them captive. When I reached the basement, the lantern flickered to life with a warm glow, casting long shadows that flickered on the walls. It felt comforting, yet the darkness still hugged the corners tightly. I approached the mirror again, feeling an eerie draw that prompted my pulse to quicken. The glass shimmered, and I could almost see the journey I had taken to get here reflected back at me. "Help us," the voices beckoned, this time clearer and more desperate. I felt their pain echo within me, and my resolve hardened. I set the lantern down and leaned closer to the mirror. "I'm here to help," I called out, my voice steadier than I felt. "What do I need to do?" But darkness just swirled within the glass, revealing nothing but the tortured faces of the trapped children. Their eyes widened in horror, as if they understood what was coming. Suddenly, a cold wind swept through the basement, like an unseen presence sweeping past my legs, sending a shiver up my spine. I took a step back, the temperature dropping dangerously low. I could see my breath fogging the air. "No!" I yelled against the powerful gust, clenching my fists in defiance. "I won't let you take me." At that moment, the mirror vibrated, rattling within its frame. A low growl filled the air, a sound that seemed to come from the depths of the basement itself, almost as if the walls were alive and angry. Feeling the pull intensifying, I stepped back, but my foot slipped on something wet and cold. Panic surged through me as I looked down, realizing a black, viscous substance was oozing from the cracks in the floor. It glistened under the dim light of the lantern, resembling ink with a mind of its own. Fear gripped my heart as I stumbled over it, grabbing the mirror's edge to steady myself. As I regained my footing, I felt the voice of the girl resonate in my mind, urgent and sharp. "You need to break the mirror," she whispered, though her tone felt heavy with sorrow. "Only then can we go home." I looked back at the mirror, its surface now swirling like a storm, shadows and light battling against each other. Fingers trembling, I took the lantern and held it high. "If breaking the mirror can help you, then I will do it," I shouted, the fear morphing into determination. I searched around for something, anything I could use to smash the glass. My heart raced. I wasn't just a scared child anymore. I was a beacon of hope, the only one who could free them. Suddenly, the shadows around me writhed in fury, lunging at me like wild beasts, urgency spilling from every dark corner. They clawed at my clothes, pulling me closer to the mirror, whispering sinister promises. "Join us," they hissed, their voices slithering through the air. "You can have power. You can be like us." Ignoring the temptation, I spotted an old rusted pipe lying on the ground. It was heavy and looked perfect for breaking the mirror. With purpose, I lunged for it, grabbing it tight. The darkness swirled around me, but my determination blazed like a fire within. I ran back to the mirror, my heart pounding defiantly against the weight of despair. With one swift swing, I struck the edge of the mirror, and it shattered like glass raining down onto the floor. A cacophony of screams erupted, filling the basement, with an otherworldly wail. The shadows recoiled in terror, pulling away as if wounded by the light of my action. I could see the faces of the children flickering and fading into fragments of glass, their expressions shifting from fear to hope. As the shards fell, rays of light burst forth, illuminating the entire basement. The dark, oozing substance receded, pulling back into the shadows. "You did it!" the girl cried, her voice louder now, filled with joy and relief. "You freed us!" The depth of her emotion struck me hard, sending a rush of warmth through my veins. But even as happiness surged, a new sense of urgency began to stir. The dark whispers transformed into a roar, a furious hiss that filled the room like a raging storm. "You cannot escape," they bellowed. "You are ours." The basement shook around me as the dark vortex swirled angrily, attempting to reclaim what I had taken from it. Just then, I saw them. The children escaping from the mirror shards, their forms shimmering as they reached for the light. They rushed past me, ghostly figures gathering strength, moving toward what felt like a sanctuary just out of reach. Despite the tendrils of darkness clawing at their heels, they pressed forward, fear and hope intertwining on their faces. But as they neared the glow, I felt a sudden surge of cold grab me, something stronger than before, wrapping around my legs like chains. Panicking, I realized the darkness was trying one last time to pull me back into its depths. "No!" I screamed, fighting against it with all my strength. I couldn't let it take me. I had to go with the children and help them reach the light. I took a deep breath, picturing the escape that awaited them. "You can do it! Keep going!" I shouted, willing them to sprint into the brightness. They looked back at me with gratitude and fear, their determination shining bright. With one last push, they broke free, rushing toward the light, and I felt a wave of relief wash over me. But that relief was short-lived. I could feel the tendrils of darkness tightening around me, pulling me closer, drowning out the fading sounds of their joy. The girl was last to leave, her expression resolute. "I will remember you," she cried, her voice a haunting echo as she vanished into the light. My blood ran cold as the shadows enveloped me, pushing me toward the mirror's remnants, trying to consume me whole. With every ounce of strength, I fought back, grappling against the oppressive force. "I am not yours," I screamed, clenching the rusted pipe tighter. I swung at the remaining shards, shattering them one by one, each strike echoing with defiance. Light exploded around me, a brilliant white that sliced through the oppressive darkness, forcing it to retreat, but not before it hissed a final threat. "You will pay for this." Suddenly, the basement ceased its tumult, and the shadows fell silent. I stood alone among the remnants of the shattered mirror, panting, trying to grasp the reality of what had just happened. The darkness shrank away into corners, defeated, but I knew it wasn't truly gone. A sense of victory surged through me, but it was mixed with a heavy weight of sorrow. I had freed them, yet I had also unleashed something I couldn't fully understand. I needed answers. I could feel the house around me shift, its energy transformed, more alive than ever. As I took a moment to gather my thoughts, I felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps I could learn about the house's dark history, the source of its evil. I resolved to find out more, not only for myself, but for the others who had suffered within these walls before me. Could I find a way to protect my family from the evil that lurked here? Or would a greater threat come for me next? The questions buzzed in my mind as I stepped toward the staircase, my heart still pounding with every step. With courage swelling inside, I knew I hadn't finished my journey. As I reached the top of the stairs, I realized it wasn't just the basement holding secrets. The whole house felt alive, vibrating with an energy that was hard to ignore. Every creak of the floorboards echoed through the silence, as if the house itself was whispering its own tales of terror. I wandered into the dimly lit hallway, clutching the rusted pipe tightly in my hand. I could almost sense something lingering, watching me from the shadows. The once familiar surroundings now felt foreign, as if they had twisted with every event that had taken place. Shadows flitted just beyond the corner of my eye. I could almost hear the soft murmurs, but when I turned, nothing was there. The atmosphere shifted, growing heavier with each passing moment. My breath quickened and my senses sharpened. I walked toward the nearest door, an old wooden one at the end of the hallway that had always been locked. As I reached for the doorknob, a chill ran down my spine. The air grew colder, biting at my skin. Goosebumps prickled across my arms, and the sense of dread clawed at me, urging me to turn back. But I couldn't. I had to know what lay behind that door. I twisted the knob slowly, feeling it resist as if it didn't want to open. But then, with a sudden jerk, it gave way. The door creaked open, revealing a dark room filled with dust and cobwebs, like a forgotten corner of the world. Peering inside, I could see old furniture covered in white sheets, almost like ghosts waiting to be unveiled. I stepped in cautiously, the floorboards groaning beneath me. A musty smell lingered in the air, mixed with something sweet and rotten. My instincts screamed that this place had been untouched for years, but a faint sense of familiarity crept in. As I moved deeper into the room, I noticed something glinting in the dim light. A small, ornate box resting on a dusty table. It called to me, pulling me in like a moth to a flame. With trembling hands, I brushed away the cobwebs and opened it. A chilling wind swept through the room as I lifted the lid, and inside lay an array of photographs, yellowed with age. My breath caught as I examined them closer. They showed images of children playing, their smiles frozen in time. But the background caught my attention. It was my house, the same place I stood in now. I flipped through the photos, and with each turn, I felt a chill pierce through me. Some pictures held fragments of shadow, blurry figures lurking behind the cheerful faces. Who were they? Each child mirrored the ones I had seen trapped in the mirror, their expressions ranging from happiness to sheer terror. I couldn't shake the feeling that these were not just forgotten memories but warnings. Suddenly, a cold draft swept through the room, rattling the sheets covering the furniture. I felt a presence behind me, and I turned sharply, half expecting to see a figure staring back. But only shadows greeted me. Still, the sensation of being watched lingered, sending an unsettling shiver down my spine. I decided it was time to leave, but as I shuffled backward, I stepped on something that shattered underfoot. A cry escaped my lips as I bended down to see what I'd broken. Beneath my heel lay a small glass ornament, one with a delicate design that resembled the mirror. The moment it shattered, the shadows in the room thickened, swirling like a storm cloud. I stood up quickly, feeling the air grow colder, the shadows creeping closer as if they were reaching out to me. "You shouldn't have done that," a voice hissed from the darkness, low and ominous. I felt frozen in place, terror coursing through my veins. The voice was familiar yet distorted, sending pulses of dread dancing around me. I backed away slowly, feeling the remnants of fear gripping me tighter. "Who are you?" I challenged, my voice shaky. "What do you want?" The shadows writhed around me, mocking my fear, growing nearer with every second. "Join us," they whispered in unison, and I could feel their cold breath wrapping around me. "You've seen too much, and now you belong to the darkness." Panic surged through me as I turned to dash out of the room, but the shadows condensed, blocking my exit, wrapping around me like chains made of night. With desperation bubbling inside me, I swung the rusted pipe at the shadows, its metallic clank echoing in the now suffocating room. The shadows recoiled momentarily, but the force was growing, flooding the space with malevolence. "You can't escape your fate," they moaned, their voices a cacophony of lost souls trapped between realms. I thought back to the children, their faces filled with hope when they escaped. If they could do it, so could I. With one swift movement, I ran toward the glinting light filtering through the doorway. But as I lunged forward, the shadows struck back, a chilling force pulling at my limbs, trying to drag me back into their inky depths. Desperate, I swung the pipe once more with everything I had left, breaking through force after force, gasping for breath as I crumbled to the ground, but still pushing forward. The sunlight shone brightly, beckoning me outside as the shadows hissed and recoiled, growing weaker. I staggered into the hallway, lungs burning as I stumbled across the threshold, escaping the room of nightmares. But as I turned to look back, I caught a glimpse of the shadows entwined in the doorway, still watching, still waiting. Their promises lingered in the air, echoing around me. "Someday, you will return," they whispered, their voices like rustling leaves in a distant storm. The hallway felt transformed in a moment, a quiet tension filling the spaces once void of memories. I pressed my back against the wall, gripping the pipe tightly. I needed a plan. I couldn't let the darkness win. I had stared into the abyss, had felt it clawing at my back. I had to dig deeper into the past of this house, searching for answers that would shield me from the horrors still lurking. As I moved cautiously back down the hallway, I resolved to uncover the house's secrets, learning why it thrived on fear, why the children had been trapped, and ultimately how I could put an end to this nightmarish legacy once and for all. The shadows followed me, always just out of sight, but the determination continued to bloom within me. I would not let the horrors consume my mind or my family. I stepped into the main living area, ready to unearth every dark mystery this house held. I crossed the threshold to the living area, a space that had once felt cozy, but now radiated an eerie sense of tension. The walls seemed to close in around me, and I could almost hear the whispers swirling in the corners. Every movement I made sent dust motes dancing through the stagnant air, intertwining with the chilling shadows that lingered just beyond my vision. I decided to search for more clues, anything that might help me uncover the truth about this house and the dark history it held. I scanned the room, landing on an old bookshelf standing tall against the back wall. Books lined the shelves, their spines cracked and faded. I approached it, feeling a magnetic pull, like the stories trapped within were desperate to be released. Pulling one of the books from the shelf, I noticed its title, Legends of the Lost Children. My heart raced as I flipped it open, pages yellowed with age and filled with illustrations of children, some playing, others drawn in distressing poses as if caught in a nightmare. My fingers brushed over the words, and I realized these weren't just stories. They were accounts of disappearances linked to my own home. As I read on, details emerged of children who had gone missing, one after another, in the very house I stood in. The patterns grew clear, each child drawn to a mirror, each one vanishing without a trace. The last entry chilled my blood. It described a girl who had been last seen in the basement, her fate still unknown. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was part of a much larger, darker tale. Suddenly, the temperature in the room dropped, and I felt a shiver skitter down my spine. The dust in the air began to swirl, drawing my attention to the corner of the room. A figure materialized, faint at first but gradually more defined. My breath hitched in my throat as the shadowy outline of a child emerged features. Distorted, eyes wide with fear. "Help us!" The voice trembled, echoing through the living room, chilling me to my core. "You have to help us?" I felt paralyzed, trapped between the reality of the figure and the instinct to flee. I gathered my courage, stepping forward slightly. "What do you need?" "I want to help." But with each word, the figure seemed to retreat, the shadows pulling it back into their depths. "No!" I cried out, feeling the desperation wash over me. "I won't let them take you again." I lunged forward, just as it began to dissolve back into the shadows, watching helplessly as its outline flickered like candlelight. In that moment, the air filled with a cacophony of whispers, louder and more frantic. "She's coming back," they wailed. "She will take you too." The voices blended into an eerie chant, surrounding me, feeding off my fear. The walls pulsed, almost alive, as if the very structure of the house thrummed with dark energy, angry at my disruption. I turned back to the bookshelf, frantically searching for more information, something to grasp onto to help the trapped spirits. I realized the mirror must hold the key to understanding their plight. It was a conduit of sorts, a portal linking the realms. Focusing on that thought, I skimmed through books, my hands shaking, determined to find something that could help me confront whatever entity resided in the shadows. One particular book caught my eye, its cover adorned with ancient symbols. With a deep breath, I pulled it from the shelf, my heart racing at the possibilities. Inside, faded text spoke of ancient rituals and binding spells. I felt drawn to a specific passage describing a ceremony to repel dark entities. Maybe this is it, I murmured, excitement mingled with fear pulsating through me. I skimmed the words, trying to absorb every detail, knowing I would need to act quickly. The atmosphere in the room felt like a bubbling cauldron, anticipation hanging thick in the air. As I gathered the ingredients mentioned in the book, salt, a candle, and an old photograph I found tucked inside, the whispers intensified, feeding off my every move. Shadows flickered violently around me, increasing in ferocity, as if trying to deter my attempts. "Leave now," a voice shrieked, its echo curling around me like a cold wind. "You are not welcome here." Panic surged as I could feel the energy shifting, and I began to hear the faintest sound of laughter, a mocking resonance that chilled me to the bone. It was as if the darkness was taunting me, reminding me that my efforts could very well be in vain. I set to work quickly at the center of the living room, forming a protective circle with the salt. The candle flickered as I lit it, giving off a warm glow that stood defiantly against the encroaching shadows. I clasped the photograph, my fingers tracing the child's face, trying to understand her story. Was she one of the vanished? Did she suffer here like the others? Spirits of the lost. I began, my voice shaking but firm. I call upon you to rise and join the light. You are not forgotten, and I will not let the darkness claim you. The shadows recoiled slightly, swirling as if disturbed, and I could hear the whispers turn to howls. The air thickened, and I felt the temperature drop further still. "You'll never win," a child's voice screamed from the depths, agonized and desperate. The shadows twisted, angered by my defiance, their grip around me tightening, threatening to collapse the very space I occupied. Fueled by urgency, I continued the chant from the book, pouring my heart into every word. I could feel a shift in the room, a rising energy that began to push back against the darkness. "Leave this place. You have no power here. I command you." The shadows erupted in fury, howling as they fought against my words. I shut my eyes tight, determined to channel every ounce of courage and resolve. The flickering candle cast long shadows, but through the crack in my eyelids, I saw a faint light beginning to break through the oppressive darkness, shining brighter with each word of the chant. The light surged, illuminating the room, engulfing the shadows. I could hear the whispers transforming, now infused with cries of joy and relief. "We are free," they celebrated together, their voices rising in joy, mingling with the heartbeat of the light that pulsed through the room. Suddenly, a blinding flash erupted, and the shadows were forced back, pulled from the corners where they lurked. I felt weight lift from my shoulders as the oppressive darkness dissipated. But even in that moment of triumph, a darker presence lingered, its shadow looming larger than the rest. "You will regret this," it hissed, the rumbling voice echoing with an unnatural power. "You have only delayed the inevitable." Fear clawed at my insides, yet I felt a surge of determination rising within me. I needed to face this malevolent force. I had come too far to back down now. With that thought, I stood tall, clutching the candlestick, ready to confront what lay ahead. As the chilling voice echoed through the room, I felt a knot of fear settle in my stomach. This was no mere shadow. It was a dark presence that loomed larger and more sinister than the rest. "You think you've won?" It rumbled, each word vibrating with menace. "You've only sparked my wrath." The candle flickered violently before me, the light battling against the encroaching darkness. My heart raced as I stepped closer, daring to look into the abyss. "I won't let you take anyone else," I declared, channeling every ounce of determination I could muster. The air thickened around me, oppressive and heavy, stifling my breath. I could feel that ancient force tightening its grip, each second drawing me deeper into a web of fear. Shadows curled and twisted, swirling in erratic patterns, moving closer as if feeding off my apprehension. Suddenly, the lights in the room began to flicker wildly, alternating between complete darkness and blinding brightness. It felt like the house itself was being pulled apart at the seams. I pressed the candlestick against the salt barrier, muttering the words of the chant again, desperately hoping it would hold. Then came a sound that sank like lead into my heart, the unmistakable creaking of footsteps above me. They were heavy, deliberate, echoing through the empty corridors like the approach of doom. "You are not alone," the shadows sneered, their voice a chilling whisper seeping into my mind. "She's coming, and she'll be hungry." Panic surged, and I instinctively turned to flee, but the oppressive darkness reacted quickly, snaking across the floor to ensnare my feet. "You cannot escape," they chanted, their voices a cacophony of despair. The cold grasp tightened, and I could feel a presence behind me, creeping closer, almost brushing against my back. "Stay away," I yelled, pulling my legs free just in time to break the grip. I dashed toward the staircase, desperate to confront the source of the footsteps upstairs, but the shadows were relentless, clawing at my ankles, dragging me back as they howled in anger. Racing up the stairs, heart pounding, I caught fleeting glimpses of blurry figures dancing in the corners, their faces twisted in agony. It felt like the walls were pulsating as if the house were alive, enveloping me in its haunting howl. The distant laughter of children echoed around me, sweet yet laced with terror. I reached the top and froze. The hallway was dark, silent, a void that devoured sound. I could just make out my bedroom door at the end, slightly ajar, a sliver of light beckoning me forward. The oppressive energy thickened again, and I felt something brush against my shoulder, cold, clammy, and deeply unsettling. A shudder ran down my spine as I stumbled backwards, catching myself just in time. I needed to keep moving. I approached the door, every instinct screaming to turn back, yet I pushed it open. As I entered, I was met with a sight that took my breath away. The room was transformed. Toys lay scattered across the floor. Old dolls with cracked porcelain faces stared up at me, their eyes glistening under the faint light. But what caught my attention most was the mirror positioned against the wall, the surface glimmering eerily. It looked just like the one from the basement, only this one felt different, magnetic, almost as if drawing my very essence closer. But just as I felt a pull toward the mirror, I became aware of a shadow creeping from its edges, swirling and growing more solid. I stepped back, ready to flee, but my feet felt glued to the floor. "No more running," a feminine voice sighed, rich with malice. A figure began to materialize, rising from the depths of darkness, the outline of a woman, ethereal and warped. "You've meddled where you shouldn't," she hissed, her face obscured by shadows, save for a cruel smile that sent chills racing down my spine. Her presence consumed the room, pushing against me with a fearsome force. "You know nothing of what you've awakened." In that moment, I recalled the photos, the stories of the children who had vanished. Was she one of them? What kind of life had she endured that turned her into this creature of despair? Unsettling recognition settled in my heart, but I shook it off, determined not to show fear. "If you want to take me, go ahead," I shouted, anger bubbling within me. "But you can't have anyone else." I reached for the candlestick, feeling its warmth seep into my palm, grounding me. The shadows leaped toward me, flooding the edges of the room as the woman stepped closer. "Foolish child," she taunted, her laughter echoing with sadness. "You think you can confront the inevitables?" Instinctively, I stepped back toward the mirror, feeling the vibration of its energy. I recalled the ritual I had read, the courage of the children trapped in this hellish existence. Each breath filled with determination, I shouted, "You are nothing but fear. I take your power away." I could feel the energy in the room shift, a wave of light fending off the darkness as I began the incantation again. Each word resonated louder, filling the space and sparking the glimmering light that seemed to pulse from the mirror itself. The shadows shrieked, the figure recoiling in fury as the brightness pushed against her. Taking one step closer, I continued to chant, the light growing brighter with each syllable, piercing through the oppressive gloom. The woman's face twisted, rage and despair battling for control. "You will regret this," she screeched, but the shadows began to dissipate, flickering as they fought against their fading grip. With a final shout, "I command you to leave this place." The light surged, radiating like a beacon. The shadows fractured, splintering into nothingness, and with one last wail, the woman vanished, her cries echoing into oblivion. I stood there, panting, the room silent again. An unsettling calm hung in the air, yet I knew the battle was far from over. I couldn't shake the feeling that this victory was only a part of the ongoing struggle. But as I glanced at the mirror, I understood something profound. The darkness had been pushed back, but there were remnants still lurking in the corners of my mind, and I needed to confront them if I ever hoped to truly end this nightmare. There was still more to uncover, more secrets hidden within these walls. As I left the room, I felt a newfound resolve growing within me. I had tasted the darkness, faced it, and pushed it back, but it wouldn't stop until it was satisfied. I would find a way to free not just myself, but every spirit trapped by this house's curse. The journey was far from over, and I was ready to delve deeper. Determined to uncover the remaining secrets the house held, I descended the staircase, adrenaline pumping through my veins. Every creak of the wooden steps echoed like a heartbeat, the sound chasing away the unsettling silence. I could feel the presence still lingering, like a shadow in my peripheral vision, waiting for an opportunity to strike, a reminder that the darkness was not so easily vanquished. Once I reached the ground floor, I felt a strange pull toward the basement door. Memories from earlier flickered in my mind, the other children, their faces twisted in fear and longing. I needed to know what had trapped them, what lay within that darkened space beneath the house. Taking a deep breath, I mustered the courage to open the door. The air rushed past me as I stepped inside the basement, thick and cold, filling my lungs with a foul odor that lingered. The low light cast eerie shadows against the stone walls, the atmosphere charged with dread. Each step echoed ominously, threatening to awaken whatever darkness dwelled below. I moved cautiously, heart thudding loudly in my chest. The floor was littered with debris, and old, broken furniture lined the walls. Remnants of lives once lived, dreams now reduced to dust. My flashlight flickered, illuminating strange symbols etched into the stone, scrawls that resembled the drawings I had seen in the old book. My pulse quickened as understanding dawned on me. Those symbols were part of a ritual, a way to bind spirits to this world, to harness their energy. The realization hit me like a wave. The children hadn't simply vanished. They had been trapped here, their life force drained to feed the darkness. I gazed around the basement, shards of past pain piercing through the air. Then I noticed something glinting in the corner. A small, tarnished box lay half buried under the rubble. My gut twisted with both excitement and fear as I moved closer, my instincts screaming for me to turn back. Hesitating for a split second, I snatched the box, fingers trembling as I pried it open. Inside was a collection of aged photographs, each image depicting children I recognized from the stories, their faces eerily similar to the figures I had seen in my visions. In one blurred image, a familiar child grinned, his eyes alive with innocence, but as I turned the photo, something fell off. His smile faded, replaced by a look of sheer terror, as though he had sensed something lurking just out of frame. A chill crawled up my spine, and I felt a presence behind me, heavy, hostile, crawling through the air like smoke. The air thickened, almost suffocating, as the shadows stirred, twisting and writhing. I turned just in time to see the shadows coalescing into a figure, a child, their face hollow and eyes wide with despair. "Help me!" they shrieked, their cry full of panic. "You can't leave!" Panic surged within me. "What do you want? How can I help you?" I shouted, desperation flooding my voice. The figure reached out a hand, fingers extending toward me, the shadows twisting around it as if grasping for something beyond my reach. "Release us," they wailed. "She won't let us go." My heart raced, the weight of understanding crashing over me. The woman from earlier had bound these children, using them to strengthen her hold on this realm. I needed to act fast. I had to confront her darkness to free the children trapped within its grasp. The basement walls began to pulse, and I felt the temperature drop further as her lurking presence seeped back into the room. "Did you really think you could save them?" Her voice dripped with disdain, echoing around me like the wind. Shadows surged, pulling at my clothes, conjuring a storm of despair that spiraled wildly. "Back away!" I cried, planting my feet firmly as I pulled out the box of photographs. "You can't keep them." The air hummed with energy as I channeled the determination that burned inside me. I began to chant the words from the book, the salt I had used before, remnants still around my feet. With each word, the symbols etched into the walls glowed faintly, resonating with the incantation taking shape. "Leave them be!" I shouted louder, feeling the power rise with every syllable. "You have no hold here." The shadows convulsed, shrieking in anger as they twisted painfully around me, closing in like a black fog, trying to extinguish the flicker of light I'd evoked. "Foolish child, you'll regret this," the woman screamed, materializing before me with a speed that made my heart stop. There she stood, ghastly and gaunt, her face twisted into a grotesque expression of rage. "You think you can drive me away? I am not afraid of you," I countered, my voice steadying. "You cannot break me." The shadows coiled around her, reaching as if to strike, but the energy I had summoned surged stronger, pushing against the darkness directly. As my voice grew louder, the photographs began to glow within the box, illuminating the basement, casting vibrant light that splashed against the walls, lighting up the child's face. The shadows writhed as if in pain, pulling away from the glow. With a renewed sense of hope, I pressed forward. "You can't keep them from the light. Their spirits are strong," I called out, summoning every ounce of strength. "I command you to leave this world." The energy pulled tighter around me, wrapping me in its warmth. But the woman fought back fiercely, letting out a roar of anguish. The sound cracked like thunder, rattling the very foundations of the house. "You'll never win," she screamed. The walls seemed to shake, the symbols burning brighter as they absorbed my energy, the light growing intense and blinding, pushing back the shadows. I pressed the photos against the mirror, hoping that somehow they would connect with the children's spirits yearning for freedom. "Come through. You are not lost anymore." Suddenly, the shadows erupted in a torrent of energy, as though the basement itself was collapsing under the weight of the struggle. The figure of the child shrieked again, "Help us," as shards of darkness lashed toward me. But I gritted my teeth, standing my ground. "Go back. Leave this place," I yelled, clenching my fists, focusing on the light that outlined me. The child's face shimmered, and then slowly faded into the light, the glow illuminating the basement. And at that moment, just as the shadows lunged toward me, a blinding light erupted from the mirror, engulfing the room. A surge of warmth enveloped me, wrapping me in a feeling of safety. The shadows howled once more, twisting in agony, their form dissolving into nothingness. I felt myself being swept up in a wave of energy, propelled forward as a brilliant light shone through the darkness. And just like that, I was transported into the very core of the chaos, where swirling shadows collided with brilliant streams of light. My senses heightened as I focused on the spirits, the lost children, each face illuminated with hope. They began to manifest beside me, their eyes bright once again. "Thank you," one whispered, their voice ringing with clarity, free from the weight of despair. I opened my eyes, realizing I stood in the center of the chaos, heart racing. "You are free," I cried, my voice echoing through the void. "You can leave this place." The shadows began to wane, retreating farther, unable to withstand the power of the children's spirits. As they surged toward the light, The darkness howled in fury one last time before shattering into a million tiny shards, scattering into the ether. As the shadows shattered and the light enveloped me, a wave of relief rushed through my veins. I turned to look at the children, their faces radiant with joy as they began to swirl around me, laughter cascading like a gentle melody. The air vibrated with warmth, and for a moment I felt invincible. But the relief was fleeting. In the distance, the remaining darkness began to gather itself into something palpable. It twisted and writhed in an unholy dance, reforming into a mass that felt far more menacing than before. A sinister whisper hung in the air, rolling over me like thunder. "You think you can escape?" I shivered, the hairs on my neck standing on end. There was a feeling of dread that slithered back into my heart. Despair was brewing just out of reach. The remnants of shadows coiled around the mirror. The very thing that had once connected us to these spirits now appeared to be tainted, crackling ominously. Panic rose again. "We need to go," I shouted, trying to usher the children toward the shimmering light that pulsed steadily in the center of the chaos. But they lingered, uncertain, glancing back at the swirling darkness that clawed at its edges. "What is happening?" One of them whimpered, their voice trembling, a reminder of their torment. "They want to keep you," I urged, glancing at the depth of suffering that brewed behind me. "We must hurry." But just as I reached out to pull them away, the shadows surged back toward us with raw power, expanding rapidly, engulfing us in a wave of despair. I stumbled back, feeling the pressure against my chest as if 1,000 hands were dragging me deeper into the chaos. The chilling laughter of the woman reverberated through the air, rich with malice. "You cannot save them." Suddenly, darkness erupted from beneath my feet, dragging me down into an abyss filled with terror. I felt a slipstream of coldness seep into my bones as the faces of the children around me began to distort, their expressions shifting from joy to sheer panic. "No, don't let it take us," they pleaded, their voices a chorus of fear mingled with urgency. With each passing second, I felt myself being pulled away from the light, and my heart raced as I fought against the shadows, battling against an insurmountable force. In a moment of clarity, I remembered the incantation, the very words that had pushed back the darkness before. I took a deep breath, steadying myself against the tumult. "Children," I yelled, my voice loud enough to pierce through the chaos surrounding us. "Focus on the light. Focus on me." My mind raced, recalling the warmth that had flowed through us moments before. "We will break free together." As I recited the chant with fervor, I felt the light start to flicker, pushing against the frigid grasp of the shadows. The air around us shimmered, a kaleidoscope of colors breaking through the encroaching dark. The faces of the children began to glow again, their features smoothing out as they concentrated on my words, hope shining in their once dim eyes. The shadows screeched, angrily contorting at the bright aura expanding through the darkness. And as I lifted my voice even louder, the very fabric of reality around us felt like it was bending. "We command you to leave," I cried, feeling a surge of empowerment as the anthem lifted the spirits around me. For an instant, the shadows surged back, but then the combined force of our energy began to break against their hold. It was working. The darkness encountered a barrier, screeching in protest as it twisted chaotically, unable to envelop us any longer. The terror of the woman's laughter faded, replaced by a howl of rage that filled the air. But in that moment of triumph, something shifted abruptly. A cold wind swept through, chilling us to the bone. The mirror behind me cracked ominously, remnants of its brightness flickering dangerously like a dying flame. "You've made a grave mistake, child," the voice hissed, now filled with venom. "You never should have come here." The ground shook violently beneath me, and I struggled to keep my footing. The children clutched my arms, their faces painted with fear. Just then, the shadows surged forward again, lurching closer. I realized the barrier was failing, and we might be trapped forever. Desperation filled my voice as I shouted into the tempest. I won't let you take them. You're nothing but a memory, a whisper lost to time. I bind you to this place." With those words, I steeled myself against the terror rising within, focusing all my energy on the children beside me. "Together," I urged, feeling the connection between us strengthen, the warmth spreading like wildfire. The shadows recoiled, swiping furiously at the light we had conjured, their blows impotent against our combined will. Then came the final assault. A massive wave of dark energy erupted from the depths, colliding with our light like a thunderstorm at sea. "You will be consumed," the woman screamed, her figure looming larger than before, her eyes glowing with a haunting red fury. Yet, amidst that chaos, I felt a flicker of hope surge deep within me, filling every corner of my being. "We won't back down," I yelled again, pulling the children close as I lifted my hands, shaking off the encroaching shadows. I poured all my resolve into the chant, repeating it over and over, until the very air vibrated with our collective strength. Suddenly, the mirror exploded with radiant light, sending shards of brilliance spiraling throughout the room. The shadows shrieked, collapsing against the brilliance. The children began to float, eyes wide with exhilaration, laughter breaking through the tension. In that moment, the darkness shattered, splitting apart and dissolving into the air like mist under the sun. A rush of energy surged through me, propelling me upward, and as I opened my eyes, I saw the children swirling around me, their faces alight with joy, free at last. But I realized the woman had not been entirely vanquished. Her presence lingered, cryptic and haunting, swirling just beyond our reach. And as I looked around, trying to catch my breath, a lingering dread settled back inside me, reminding me this battle was not over. I knew I had freed them, but what if the darkness returned? What if the woman would launch another attack on us, a retribution meant to haunt me forever? The air crackled with uncertainty as I sensed she was still watching, still waiting for the moment I would fall sure. Let's keep going with the story, maintaining the suspense and adding those unsettling elements. As the last echoes of banshee-like wails faded into the distance, I stood there, breathless, awash in an otherworldly glow. The pressure that had clung to me like a heavy cloak lifted, replaced by an almost euphoric sense of lightness. It felt surreal, like I had slipped through a veil into another realm, one where shadows were only remnants of what had once been. But just as I dared to breathe a sigh of relief, an eerie silence settled over the room, as if the world itself were holding its breath. The air around me crackled with tension, and I became acutely aware of the shift, the lingering darkness still swirling just beyond the edges of my perception. It was as if the house were still alive, thrumming with a dark energy that refused to let go. "Don't think it's over," a voice hissed, sending a shiver racing down my spine. It was low and guttural, slithering through the air like icy fingers brushing against my skin. I turned sharply, eyes darting around the cramped basement, my pulse quickening again. "You can't escape what you've unleashed." The shadows flickered, morphing into grotesque shapes that twisted and contorted, coalescing into a figure that loomed larger than life itself. It felt as if the darkness had regained its strength, fed by my uncertainty and fear. The woman, her twisted visage now clearer, advanced toward me, each step deliberate and filled with malice. "You may have freed the children," she taunted, the bitterness in her voice striking deep, "but that only made me stronger. You have awoken something far worse." She gestured broadly, and with that, the basement walls shimmered and warped, revealing grotesque images etched into stone, scenes of despair and suffering from long ago. I felt bile rise in my throat as the horrific visions danced before my eyes. Children lost and trapped, countless souls lost to the void, their laughter silenced. Each image seemed to scream, pulling me deeper into the abyss of despair. "They were never yours to save," the woman spat, her expression a storm of rage and vengeance, eyes flaring with fury as the walls pulsed with her energy. I had to do something. Panic surged within me, but I pushed it down, focusing on the shimmering light that had connected me to the spirits of those I had just freed. If the darkness could feed off my fear, then I had to show no weakness. I gripped the box of photographs, the tangible memories of the children who once played here, their spirits intertwined with the very essence of the house. "Your time is up," I said, steadying my voice as I pointed the box toward her, the light glowing brighter once more. "I won't let you take anyone else." The woman recoiled for a moment, as if the light seared her flesh. Her face contorted with a mix of shock and simmering rage. "You think those little trinkets can shield you from my wrath?" she rasped, lunging forward, shadows swirling violently around her. In that instant, the basement shook violently, dust raining down from the ceiling like confetti of despair. I stumbled back, struggling to maintain my balance, but with the weight of fear threatening to drag me under, I hastened my words, sending the incantation spiraling through the air like a lifeline. "Those who linger in darkness will find their way to light," I shouted, each syllable ringing out like a bell tolling the end. The walls vibrated with energy, absorbing my words, the symbols glowing intensely as they pulsed in response to my command. The specter wavered, uncertainty flickering in her eyes, and for just a fleeting moment, I thought I could see fear there within her. "You cannot stop this," she screamed, echoing through the chaos, and the shadows lashed out, trying to engulf me. But I held my ground, breathing deep. "I will stop you," I called again, the energy resonating off the walls like a shockwave. With each word, I felt the light strengthen, bolstering my resolve as the shadows shrieked and writhed around me, shriveling under the potency of my defiance. The shadows shrieked in pain, threatening to swallow me whole, but the brightness flared, slicing through the darkness like a knife. The walls trembled violently, and I kept my focus on the photographs, pouring my energy into freeing each of those lost souls once and for all. The woman's form flickered violently, caught between weakness and rage as she struggled to maintain her shape. "You are a fool! You cannot break my hold!" she screeched, the words dripping with venom. But I felt the light surge within me, hot and fierce. "I won't be your tool." With a roar, I thrust the photographs back toward the mirror, the energy erupting from me, igniting the air and filling the space with brilliant luminescence. Shadows screeched, twisting desperately as the blinding light enveloped the basement, hot and searing like a flame. For a moment, the room felt infinitesimal, as if time itself had paused. I lost all sense of self, becoming one with the bright energy that surged through, pushing the darkness back into the recesses from which it emerged. But the woman was relentless. "You cannot erase me," she shrieked, her fury echoing off the basement walls as the shadows clawed at the top of the light, reaching for me in a desperate attempt to pull me into the abyss. They latched onto my mind, whispering cruel things, dredging up fears I thought I'd buried long ago. "No!" I shouted, shaking my head violently, fists clenched tight. Strength surged through me, ignited by the memories of the children once lost, their laughter echoing in my heart like a sweet melody. "This ends now." And then, with a final surge of will, I released the energy I had awakened within, channeling all of my pain and determination into a blinding burst of light. The darkness writhed in agony, screams rippling through the air like thunder as the blinding force shattered it apart, pulling it back from the edges of existence. As the last remnants of shadows disintegrated into nothingness, I sagged against the wall, panting heavily, breaths escaping in ragged gasps. The basement stood eerily quiet, the weight of dread lifted, yet a sense of foreboding still lingered. From the corner of my eye, I saw flickers of light darting through the air, whispers of the spirits released. "Thank you," they called, voices ethereal and soft, wrapping around me in warmth. "You've set us free," but a chill crept back in, prickling at the back of my neck. I wasn't naive enough to think that the darkness could be destroyed once and for all. I had only pushed it back, trading one battle for many more to come. The house still felt alive, its walls vibrating with untold stories and echoes of sorrow. I needed to discover what remained, where the shadows might have taken root, lurking beneath the surface. What else do I need to uncover? I breathed, determination welling up within me as I prepared to confront whatever challenges awaited. Each step forward felt both like a reckoning and a calling, a chance to face the haunting truths buried deep within the bones of this house. And as I began my search for the next hidden doorway into the darkness, the flickering sound of laughter rang suddenly through the corridor, sweet yet chilling, echoing off the walls. "Come play with us," a childlike voice chimed, and my breath caught in my throat as I recognized the tone. It was the same voice I had heard earlier, a siren beckoning from the depths of despair. I frowned, the chill washing over me once more, heart pounding with the realization that my journey was only just beginning. I froze for a moment, heart racing, the soft, childlike laughter hanging in the air like a ghostly echo. "Come play with us," it called again, more insistent this time, sending a shiver down my spine. It felt almost innocent, yet the darkness around it felt thick, swirling with an energy that was anything but friendly. Turning slowly, my eyes searched the corners of the dimly lit corridor, shadows flickering in the feeble glow of what remained of the light. "Who's there?" I called, attempting to keep my voice steady, yet it trembled with uncertainty. The laughter danced around me, teasing, inviting, but I resisted the urge to step closer. As I strained to listen, my breath turned shallow. The laughter morphed into soft whispers that snaked through the air, intertwining with the memories of the past and the remnants of the children I'd freed. It was a melody I didn't recognize, yet it resonated like a haunting lullaby laced with danger. I could feel an unseen presence, watching, waiting just beyond the limits of my vision. The shadows almost seemed to stretch out toward the sound, as if they were drawn to it. Suddenly, I saw a flicker of movement near the far wall, an outline of a small figure darting just out of view. I took a cautious step forward, compelled to find the source of the call. As I moved, the air shifted, cold and sharp, wrapping around me like a tightening grip. Every instinct screamed that I shouldn't follow, but the voice continued to beckon me, pulling me deeper into the darkness. "Please come play," the voice chirped again, sounding almost desperate now, and I couldn't help but feel the echo of longing beneath the surface. Shadows seemed to pulse with anticipation, as if the darkness itself was alive and sentient, feeding off my curiosity and fear. With each step, I could feel the floor beneath me shift. The wood creaked and groaned, as if warning me of the dangers that lay ahead. I could sense movement in the corners, glimpses of children darting in and out of the shadows. Their faces were obscured, but I could feel the urgency in their plea. It was intoxicating and terrifying, like being on the edge of a precipice. As I reached a corner, the whispers melded into laughter again, high-pitched and ringing, yet sounding oddly mismatched, like porcelain dolls in a play gone wrong. I rounded the bend, and there stood a dimly lit room, its walls lined with faded drawings and toys that had long been neglected. In the center of the room, a circle of children surrounded a worn-out toy chest, their faces illuminated by an eerie glow. I squinted, desperate to see them more clearly, but the shadows kept shifting, distorting their features. They turned as one, all staring with wide black eyes that seemed to absorb every ounce of light around them. "Join us," they chorused, their voices a haunting melody, swelling in intensity. "We're waiting for you." The air grew heavy, oppressive as a wave of panic flooded me. There was something unsettling about their joy, something that felt deeply wrong. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper, trembling under the weight of their gaze. The atmosphere shifted, and their smiles dropped, replaced by expressions of hollow hunger. "Help us take us out of here," a boy finally spoke, his voice cracking under the strain. "We want to play outside again. It's dark in here." Before I could respond, the shadows seemed to pulse and throb, crawling closer, eager to envelop the children in their murky embrace. "Don't listen to them," a whisper echoed from the depths of the room, sinister and cold. slicing through the treacle of dread. "Stay and play," the children urged again, their voices rising in unison, unsettling harmonies mixing, swirling around me like a tempest. "The darkness is lying," I shouted, trying to cut through their chant, desperate to keep my sanity intact. "You're bound to this place." The light flickered once more, the room trembling with energy as I raised my flashlight, hoping to illuminate the truth. But the shadows only deepened, coiling tighter around the figures, pulling them down into the abyss, their laughter twisting into haunting cries. "Don't leave us. We need you," they cried, their eyes frantic now, pleading in a way that struck through the fabric of my heart, tearing at my resolve. Suddenly, the toy chest creaked open on its own, revealing an array of dusty old toys, their eyes glinting in the dim light. The sight made my skin crawl, and a deep, instinctual fear twisted in my gut. I stepped back, the whispers cycling round sharper and louder, drowning out my thoughts. "We want to play," they beckoned, the urgency rising in their voices. But in the center of that madness, there was a pull that made my stomach churn, a sensation that something was terribly amiss. I forced myself to breathe through the rising dread, aware that I was teetering on the edge of something far more sinister than I had anticipated. Taking another cautious step backward, I remembered the box of photographs in my hand. They were the key to these children's freedom. "You can be free," I shouted, the light illuminating my path. "You don't have to stay here in the dark." The shadows recoiled momentarily, shrieking as I brandished the box, revealing the smiles and joy frozen in time. The children hesitated, uncertainty gripping them. I could see the flicker of the past haunting their eyes, a traumatic history that kept them tethered to this place. "No," the boy shouted, frustration creeping into his tone. "We don't want to go. We want to play." "Stay with us," they cried as the shadows surged again, pulling them closer toward the chest, whispering promises wrapped in lies. "The games are just beginning." Panic seized my heart as I realized I was running out of time. The darkness was pushing back, threatening to envelop them and snuff out the light of hope I'd sparked. "Listen to me," I pleaded, voice shaking. "This isn't a game, it's a trap." The air thickened, each breath a struggle against the weight of despair suffocating me. I could feel the shadows closing in, the room vibrating with the tension of 1,000 trapped souls fighting for release. My instincts screamed for me to run, yet my heart ached for the children caught in the turmoil. With a surge of determination, I moved closer again, drawing strength from the warmth of the photographs. "You deserve freedom," I called out. "Don't let her keep you here." Suddenly, the room plunged into darkness. The pale glow faded, colliding with the overwhelming blackness that surged forward with a deafening roar. I felt breathless, as if the very air were being drawn from my lungs. I was about to be swallowed whole, and yet, amid that suffocating dark, I felt an ember of hope flicker within me. I clung to it, refusing to let it go as the whispers crescendoed into a chaotic symphony of torment. "Find your light," I implored, raising the photographs high once more. "Your spirits don't belong to her. You can break free." And in that moment, I felt the children shift, their eyes narrowing as they gazed into the light. I could sense the change, the flicker of resolve breaking past the cloud of despair. With a roar, I chanted the words from the book again, a bright incantation that spread warmth into every corner of the room, rallying the spirits once more. The shadows recoiled in anguish, howling like a tempest, the force of my will amplifying within the room, matching their rage. "You don't control them," I shouted into the void, defiance igniting like wildfire within me. The children began to glow faintly, outlines shimmering like stars against the dark, beacons of hope. "Help us. We can be free." Their voices melded together, rising and falling like a wave crashing against despair. And with that final push, a blinding light erupted from the photographs, filling the room with a brightness that chased the shadows away. The darkness screeched, twisting in pain. I stood strong, unyielding, raising my voice high. "You are stronger than this. You can escape." The shadows shrieked, dissolving into wisps of darkness, dissolving into the very fabric of nothingness. The children shined brighter, a tapestry of radiant colors swirling together, laughter mixing with joy as they surged toward the light, free at last. But I felt the intensity shift again as the final echoes of rage and despair twisted around me, slimy fingers snaking toward my heels. I turned, my heart racing as a figure coiled within the depth of darkness rose before me. The woman's fury palpable, her face contorted into an expression of pure malice. "You will pay for this," she hissed, her voice echoing like thunder, resonating deep within the marrow of my bones. "You can't escape the darkness. It is your fate." As I held my ground, the laughter of the freed children echoed in the air, a triumphant melody rising above the chaos. "You don't own us," I cried, bolstered by their voices, feeling the last remnants of fear peel away from my heart. But even as I spoke those words, dread pooled in the pit of my stomach. I recognized that this battle was not over. The shadows still clung to the remnants of the house, ready to fight, and the woman would not let go so easily. With the light flickering between us, I braced myself for the confrontation that lay ahead. The final showdown between light and shadow had just begun, and somewhere in the depths, I could hear the whisper of the children's laughter, reminding me, even in despair, hope never dies. I could feel the weight of her fury in every corner of the dark room, swirling around me like a storm. The shadows were alive, whispering my fears, reminding me of the darkness lurking beneath the surface. "You think you can win?" she sneered, her voice dripping with venom, echoing in my mind. "You are nothing against the depths of despair." Her form flickered, morphing and merging with the shadows, creating a grotesque silhouette that sent chills cascading down my spine. My hands trembled as I held the box of photographs tightly, the memories of the children inside anchoring me to the ground. "I won't let you take them again," I declared, voice shaking, but determination igniting a fire in my chest. Suddenly, the room shuddered violently, and I stumbled back, nearly losing my balance. The laughter that once felt comforting twisted into a cacophony of screams, reverberating off the walls in a hellish symphony. "You can't hold on forever," the woman bellowed, shadows expanding around her like claws reaching out to claw at my resolve. I took a step back, feeling the temperature drop, the air thickening with a palpable tension that made every hair on my neck stand straight. "Your fear feeds my power," she cackled, the sound echoing through the air, resonating like a taunt meant to undermine me. I had to focus. I couldn't let her victory seep into my bones. Gripping the box tighter, I recalled the joy that lived within those photographs. I closed my eyes for just a moment, bringing their faces into my mind, bright smiles that once filled this house with laughter. They weren't lost. They were waiting for me to fight for them. "No more!" I shouted, opening my eyes wide, the words bursting forth like a torrent. "Leave this place!" I felt the light swell within me, pushing against the dark shadows that tried to smother it. The woman's eyes widened, and for a brief moment, the shadows recoiled at my defiance, flickering with doubt. But it was fleeting. I could sense the darkness rallying behind her, growing stronger, angrier. The walls began to pulse, as if the house itself was alive, thumping like a frantic heartbeat. I took a deep breath, feeling energy surging through me like a river bursting its banks. "Your hold on them is broken," I yelled, sending out a rush of incantations I found buried deep within my soul. The shadows shrieked, light bursting forth from the photographs, illuminating the room with an eerie brilliance. The children's laughter returned, sweet and melodic, spiraling into harmony, pushing back against the darkness. I could see their forms beginning to materialize from the shadows, outlines beautified by the soft glow surrounding them. But the woman lashed out, her confusion transforming into rage. "You think you can save them? You're a fool!" she shrieked, her voice a chilling harmony of fury and despair. Shadows twisted in a frenzy, slamming against the walls, rattling the very foundation of my resolve. "Stay together," I called out to the children, hoping to drown out the woman's cacophony of chaos. I sensed their presence becoming clearer, the glow intensifying as they moved toward the light. The warmth wrapped around me, igniting courage deep within my bones. "Come on, let's break free," I urged, my voice steady despite the chaos. "We have to go." I could feel the energy swell around me, a tide of hope against the dark. The shadows cringed, battling against the light as I stood resolute, channeling every ounce of will. "Your fear is insignificant," I shouted, the words roaring from my throat like a storm. The woman staggered back, visibly shaken. "You don't understand what I've sacrificed for this power," she yelled, her distorted face twisted with rage, shadows swirling dangerously around her like a tempest. I saw a flicker of doubt cross her features, just for a moment, and I knew it was my chance. "Sacrifice doesn't give you control," I declared, pushing forward with renewed strength. The children began to glow brighter, their ethereal forms merging with the surrounding light, healing the broken pieces of their souls. "You can't keep them trapped in your darkness." Her shadowy tendrils lashed toward me, gripping my legs, trying to pull me down, dragging me into the abyss she commanded. I gritted my teeth, drawing from the energy within the light, using it to fight against the intoxicating tendrils that sought to ensnare me. "You're losing your grip," I shouted, feeling the warmth of the children's spirits empowering me as I leaned into the glow. The shadows screamed, transforming into a mad whirlwind of fury. "You will regret this," she howled, her voice distorted, echoing in layers, like the wail of lost souls. I stumbled back, struggling against the weight that clung to me, but I wouldn't let her despair pull me under. I had faced darkness before, and it was in that moment I felt the flicker of hope harden into a flame. "This is not the end," I declared, hurling the box of photographs towards her. As it soared through the air, my breath caught. The photos unfurled like petals, scattering across the room, their light illuminating every dark corner. Each image exploded into vibrant colors, painting the shadows with memories of happiness that spilled against the walls. "No!" The woman's scream echoed, sharp and piercing, her form flickering like dying embers as the light enveloped her. In this radiant brilliance, I saw the children dance in the luminous glow, their laughter harmonizing with the lights, lifting the weight of despair. I could feel her desperation growing, a throbbing pulse of anger and fear. The shadows around her lurched uncontrollably, desperate to grasp onto anything to keep her anchored. But I stood firm, eyes narrowing, not giving her an inch. "Your time is over." In that moment, the energy within the box surged, pulsing with a new life it had never contained before. The spirits resonated against the walls, creating a symphony of defiance that wrapped around me like a shield. I could feel the pulse of the house, its walls vibrating with remembrance, pushing against the darkness. "Embrace the light," I shouted, pushing my hands forward, channeling everything I had into a singular force. The photographs erupted into brilliant bursts of color, illuminating every shadow, saturating the room with warmth. The children's laughter pealed like bells, a beautiful chorus echoing back the love they had been denied. But in the eye of the storm, the woman twisted, her form warping grotesquely as though she was trying to meld into the shadows surrounding her. "I refuse to be forgotten," she screamed, darkness swirling around her in a frenzy, ready to lash out. The shadows clawed at the light, but it broke through, unyielding. I could feel the energy surging within me, a surging river of defiance against the encroaching dark. "Feel the happiness you've stolen," I bellowed. The light burst brighter, driving deeper into the shadows, seeking the heart of her despair. The room shook violently, dust raining from the ceiling as the shadows writhed and screeched, angry and terrified. The joyful laughter of the children grew louder, drowning out the chaos, igniting a fire within the darkness. "No," she bellowed one last time, and I could see the shadows disintegrate, tearing apart as the children's spirits merged into the light. A blinding explosion erupted, filling the room with purity, washing away the remnants of sorrow that had lingered for too long. As the echoes of her screams faded into the night, I stood there, surrounded by a soft glow. The children's laughter danced around me, joyous and free, floating softly through every corner of the room. A gentle breeze swept through my hair, wrapping around me like a warm embrace. I had done it. I had broken the grip of darkness that had shackled their souls, and yet I sensed something ominous still lurking at the edges, waiting to strike when I least expected it. The house felt different, lighter. The energy pulsed with life, but there was a lingering sensation of sadness beneath it all, as though the shadows still lingered, just out of reach. I took a deep breath, knowing there was more to unravel within this place. I needed to uncover the truth of what had once transpired, to understand the grievances tethering the spirits to the dreary existence within these walls. And as the soft giggles faded into insistent silence, I understood my journey was far from over. With renewed determination, I stepped forward into the heart of the house, ready to confront what lay in wait. Wherever the whispers led, I would follow, uncovering the legacy of darkness, the cycle of despair waiting for its chance to reclaim what had been lost. I stepped cautiously into the hallway, shadows creeping along the walls like fingers wanting to pull me back. Each footfall echoed, a reminder that silence was just an illusion here. The air grew thick, wrapping around me like a heavy blanket, making it hard to breathe. I could sense the remnants of joy still lingering here, but it was marred by something sinister, something lurking just beyond the edge of my sight. As I moved deeper into the house, the temperature dropped further, a chill wrapping around my spine like an icy grip. I clenched my fists, determined, a feeling gnawed at my gut, whispering to me that the darkness wasn't finished. I felt a pull, an urge to keep going, to uncover whatever truth lay hidden beneath the layers of despair that shrouded the house. The hallway stretched on, illuminated only by the soft, flickering glow of light from the previous room. Strange shapes danced along the walls, their outlines resembling faces, contorted in pain, their mouths wide open in silent screams. I hesitated, a shiver running down my spine at the sight. Just the shadows, I muttered to myself, trying to shake off the feeling of dread that clung to my skin. But then I heard it, a low murmur, like a soft breeze rustling through leaves, but alive with a different energy. It curled around me, beckoning me forward. I turned toward the sound, curiosity fighting against the fear that clawed at my heart. As I approached, the whispers grew clearer, and with each step, a cold draft surged past me, like the very walls were breathing. "Help us!" The voices wove through the air, pleading, echoing off the edges of my consciousness. They tugged at me, weighing heavily on my heart. I leaned closer to the source, eyes scanning the darkness ahead for any sign of their origin. The whispers intensified, creating a rhythm that felt like a heartbeat echoing in the stillness. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed, followed by the sound of shattering glass. Panic flared in my chest, and I spun around, heart racing. A mirror on the wall had shattered, its pieces scattered across the floor like 1,000 tiny stars. My breath hitched as I kneeled to examine the fragments, the edges glinting menacingly in the dim light. As I stared into the shards, I saw flickers of movement, haunted faces trapped within the glass, their eyes wide with fear, mouths silently screaming for release. A surge of dread washed over me, and I backed away, realizing that the reflections were more than just images. They were echoes of the past, clinging to the darkness surrounding the house. I staggered back, but the very house felt like it was shifting beneath me. The walls creaked ominously, whispering secrets that tickled the back of my mind. Just then, a sudden gust blew through the hallway, extinguishing the flickering light behind me. Darkness enveloped me, deeper than before, wrapping around me like a suffocating shroud. I fumbled for my flashlight, fingers trembling as I finally switched it on, the beam cutting through the pitch-black space. The light revealed distorted shapes moving in the shadows, writhing and shifting, as if they were trying to break free. My heartbeat thundered in my ears, and I directed the beam toward the end of the hallway, where I saw a door that seemed slightly ajar, a sliver of light spilling into the darkness. Could this be where the whispers are coming from? I wondered, my mind racing as I crept toward it, every instinct screaming at me to turn back. A haunting melody floated through the crack, a sing-song lullaby that echoed through the air, sweet yet sinister. I pushed the door gently, my heart pounding as it creaked open, revealing a dimly lit room. Inside was a nursery, old and forgotten. The baby's crib stood at the center. Its once white paint was peeling, and a dark stain marred the mattress. The walls were plastered with faded wallpaper depicting cheerful scenes of sunny days, starkly contrasting with the chilling atmosphere that filled the room. Dust hung in the air, dancing lazily in the beam of my flashlight as I stepped over the threshold. As I scanned the room, I felt an all-consuming sense of sorrow wash over me. Broken toys lay strewn across the floor, their once bright colors dulled by layers of neglect. A doll with one I'm missing stared vacantly at me, its smile stretched unnaturally wide, as if mocking my presence. My skin prickled with unease, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I turned slowly, instincts screaming at me to leave, but the whispers grew louder, pulling me closer. "Play with us, please." The voice floated through the air, soft yet chilling, sending ice racing through my veins. Tension gripped my chest as I approached the crib, drawn by the eerie allure of the compelling lullaby that seemed to wrap itself around me like a cold embrace. Caution dissipated as I leaned closer, straining to hear the source of that sweet, haunting melody. In an instant, the air grew heavy with sorrow, pressing down on me like a weight. Shadows danced along the walls, dark figures swirling in a chaotic ballet, tugging at my vision as if they were alive. I felt a strange compulsion to join them, a longing to understand what had transpired in this forsaken room. Then, without warning, the lullaby stopped, replaced by the sharp sound of a child's laughter, distorted and hollow. "Come and play," the voice echoed, reverberating in my mind like a chilling reminder of innocence lost. My breath quickened, feelings of fear and curiosity tangling within me, urging me to provoke whatever darkness resided in this room. The child's laughter morphed into a cacophony of voices, all overlapping each other in a twisted harmony that rang in my ears, drowning out my thoughts. "Please don't leave us." A chorus of haunting whispers seeped from every corner, echoing within the nursery, beckoning me deeper into the darkness. I felt every fiber of my being resisting, yet an inexplicable urge to answer their call urged me forward. At that moment, I caught sight of something glimmering in the crib. I took a step closer, heart racing, as if I were drawn by an invisible thread, leading me toward salvation or doom. I peered down into the depths of the crib. There lay an ornate music box, intricately carved with delicate, swirling patterns. Its surface shimmered, catching the weak light and reflecting vibrant hues. Intrigued yet wary, I reached for it, the cool metal sending a shiver coursing through me. As soon as my fingers brushed against it, the air shifted and the shadows tightened, swirling in a frenzy around me, a roar of wind carrying their cries. "Open it," they urged, their voices an unsettling blend of anticipation and longing. I hesitated, uncertainty flooding my thoughts. What had happened to the children here? Why were their spirits bound to this place? An icy grip wrapped around my heart, but the bravery stirring within me surged forth. I had to know. With trembling hands, I lifted the lid of the music box, unleashing a haunting melody that filled the room, drowning out the ambient noise surrounding me. The tune, both beautiful and devastating, wove its way into my soul. Suddenly, the shadows shrieked, more frantic now, swirling around me in a tempest of rage and despair. In that moment, the room seemed to dissolve, the walls fading into swirling darkness as the music poured forth. I found myself enveloped in the cold depths of the void, visions flashing before my eyes. Children playing in a sunlit yard, laughter ringing like bells, and then an image of chaos, a storm, a scream, a loss. "Help us," the voices cried again, now pleading, their echo weaving through the melody, punctuating the darkness that threatened to consume me. "You can save us." With each note that rang out from the music box, the visions grew clearer, revealing the tragic fate of the children who had once filled this room with laughter but were now trapped in this cycle of sorrow. I was caught in a web of their pain and joy, the memories intertwining until I could barely distinguish where one ended and the other began. The darkness coiled around me, tendrils reaching out like hands trying to pull me into their depths. "You are one of us now," a voice hissed from the shadows, its tone dripping with malice. I could feel the shadows closing in on me, smothering the light, ready to consume my every ounce of hope. "Join us." But I refused to give in. "No!" I shouted defiantly, grasping the music box tightly, the melody drowning out the fear creeping into my heart. "I won't let you take me." I began to turn, determination surging through me, rallying the essence of hope I had felt before. The music swelled as I fought back, the shadows screeching in fury. They lashed out, trying to grasp me, but the melody pierced through their darkness, illuminating the room with brilliant flashes of light, breaking through their sinister grip. With a final push of my will, I shouted, "You are not real. You are bound by fear." The light erupted, blossoming around me, engulfing the shadows in a brilliant blaze of warmth and hope. Their anguished cries rang out, echoing in a world sliding toward oblivion. I could sense my own spirit intertwining with that of the children, their hopes igniting anew, dancing into the light and flooding the room like brilliant rays of sunlight piercing through the clouded skies. Yet even as the shadows burned away, I could feel a remnant of darkness lurking in the corners, waiting for another moment of weakness. The stillness that followed was almost deafening, the once chaotic energy dissipating into a haunting silence that hung heavy in the room. As the echoes of the children's laughter faded into the night, a new chill swept through the air, cold and unyielding, twisting my thoughts back to reason. My heart sank with an uneasy realization. The house still held secrets, dark truths intertwined with every creak of the floors and every whisper in the walls. Something told me this wasn't finished. I took a deep breath, though the air felt thick with anxiety and uncertainty. I had released those spirits from their torment, but I knew there were more answers to uncover. There was still a presence lingering, waiting for me, seeking to reclaim what had been lost. With resolve, I steeled myself, ready to face whatever lay ahead. This house had a story to tell, and I would unravel every dark thread woven into its fabric, even if it meant confronting the very shadows from which I had just broken free. I stood there in the crushed silence, breathing heavily as I tried to regain my bearings. That uneasy feeling settled deep in my gut again, a warning that the house was far from empty. With determination burning inside, I knew that I needed to venture further into its depths. Whatever haunted these walls still lingered, waiting to ensnare my soul like it had with so many others. Taking a steadying breath, I made my way out of the nursery, the remnants of shadows flickering as they melted away into the light. Yet, something felt off. The air had taken on a dense, electric quality. As I traversed back down the dim corridor, I caught flickers of movement just beyond my periphery. Each time I turned, I saw nothing, only the stillness of painted walls and the floors strewn with remnants of a forgotten life. I approached a door at the end of the hallway, its surface scratched and worn, as if something had tried to claw its way out. The handle was cold under my palm, sending a jolt of energy through my arm. My breath caught in my throat, the murmurs I had heard before thrumming in the air around me. With a resolute push, I opened the door, and it creaked terribly, revealing a small cellar staircase spiraling downward into darkness. The scent of damp earth and decay wafted up from the opening, making my stomach churn. But I couldn't turn back. The pull of discovery was too strong. I flicked on my flashlight, pointing it down the stairs as I carefully descended, every step creaking beneath my weight, echoing in the oppressive stillness. As I reached the bottom, the beam of my flashlight danced over the walls of the subterranean room. My heart raced at what I found. Old photographs littered the floor, their faces smudged but still discernible. Families, children, all wearing smiles that felt like jagged edges against the darkness of my reality. I knelt to examine them closely, a chill running down my spine as shadows seemed to creep out from the pictures, as though wanting to escape into the world. But the atmosphere shifted again, the temperature dropping significantly. I turned slowly, feeling the weight of unseen eyes on me. A low whisper echoed, almost like a sigh, brushing against my ear. "Stay," it urged softly, laden with a longing that sent chills rippling through my body. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end, and panic rooted my feet to the ground even as my instincts screamed at me to flee. Suddenly, a gust of cold wind surged through the room, snatching the old photographs and swirling them around me like fallen leaves caught in a tempest. The lights flickered, and I felt a presence behind me, a heavy darkness coalescing into form. I whipped around, and there, standing just beyond the reach of my light, was a figure. It was a little girl, her long hair matted and face streaked with something dark. It looked like dried tears. Her eyes were wide, void-like, and devoid of warmth. "Help me," she murmured, a soft plea that twisted my stomach. I watched in horror as she extended a hand toward me, her fingers trembling. "It's so cold," the shadows surrounding her seemed to pulse, drawing me closer, their cold breath wrapping around my ankles as if trying to pull me down into the depths with her. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice shaky but determined to reach her. "What happened to you?" The girl didn't respond. Instead, she glanced around, looking beyond me, a flicker of something primal flaring in her eyes, fear. "You can't stay here," she whispered urgently, her voice breaking. "You have to go." But before I could steady myself, the air thickened, and I felt something shift around me. The shadows grew deeper, forming a dark pool that licked hungrily at the corners of the room. An unseen force puffed through the air, filling it with a darkness so suffocating that I struggled to breathe. The girl's figure seemed to waver, and a deep rumble vibrated through the ground, a low warning that surged beneath my feet. "Leave now," she cried, her voice rising above the dark wails echoing from the shadows. I blinked, the urge to help her warring with my instinct to escape. "Wait, I can help you," I shouted, but her form began to fade. The shadows around her coiled and danced as if angry at her defiance. And suddenly, the air burst with a loud crack. An overwhelming sensation swept over me then, something cold and gripping wrapping around my mind. "Claim her!" I heard a chorus of voices surge forth, twisted and garbled with unholy glee. My heart raced as I felt the shadows lunge toward me, desperate for new prey. I fought against the swell of terror boiling up inside, the urge to run apparent, but I couldn't abandon the girl. "Let her go!" I yelled, the panic fueling my courage as the light from my flashlight faltered beneath the weight of the dark. An unsettling laughter echoed in the room, ringing in my ears. It sounded cruel and mocking. "You cannot save her, nor yourself," the voice taunted, coiling around my mind like a binding force determined to crush me. Just as all seemed lost, another flicker of light burst from the corner of my eye, the dim glow of the music box from the nursery. The memory of the children shifted restlessly in my mind, and the sense of bravery flooded back. I turned once more and raced back toward the staircase, knowing I had to reach that precious light. But the shadows shifted around me, clawing at my arms, dragging at my feet. I stumbled forward, the contours of the cellar growing more menacing, each shadow a thick, suffocating wall that threatened to engulf me. "Leave her!" I shouted with every ounce of strength I could muster. the words swirling like smoke on the air. "You have no power over me." I lunged for the stairs, the light beckoning me like a distant star in a choking darkness. As I grasped the railing and pulled myself up, a solid wave of shadows lashed out, catching the hem of my shirt, yanking hard as I fought against it. "Stay with us," they howled in agony, desperation seeping through their malevolent tone. I wrenched myself free, the fabric tearing, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the silence. The moment I broke the surface of light, I hurled myself into the hallway, gasping, heart racing with adrenaline. I felt the shadows chase me, their anguished cries chasing the flickering reality behind me. But the warmth in the hallway enveloped me, wrapping around my body like a protective shield, holding the darkness at bay, even as it closed in around me. I focused on the nursery door, the light from the music box pulsing within its frame, urging me closer. What was it about that box? What did it hold that could shield against this dread? With every ounce of energy left, I slammed the door behind me and shut my eyes tight. Desperation rushed through me, and I instinctively opened the box again, the haunting melody spilling from it, cutting through the anxious murmur of the shadows behind me. "You have to help her," I shouted into the void as I opened my eyes, and the music blared louder. The instant the notes pierced the stillness, I felt a surge of warmth pulse through me. Shadows began to dissolve at the edges, their twisted forms retreating, cries echoing with a mix of rage and despair. I turned the dial on the box, the familiar melody building into a crescendo that reverberated through the very walls of the house. In that moment, the little girl reappeared, ethereal and faint, her features clearer than before. "You have to believe," she whimpered, her eyes pleading as she reached for the light spilling from the music box. Her voice hung in the air, drenched with hope and fear at once. "Just hold on," I urged her, my heart swelling with purpose as the shadows lashed against the barriers of light, desperate to reclaim their lost soul. With each rising note, I could feel power coursing through the air, the spirits of the children imbued with courage. I could see them begin to rise, their former selves weaving into glowing light, giving strength to the girl who stood before me. I was determined to help her find her freedom, as the shadows raged and clawed in desperation, trying to cling to her light. I raised the box high, channeling every tear the children had shed, every memory they had lost. "You can't keep her," I yelled, my voice unwavering despite the fright that clawed at the corners of my mind. The light surged from the music box and enveloped us all. Me, her, the shadows. They screamed in terror as the tendrils of light burned away their grasp. It became a whirlwind of brilliance that danced and flared in the depths of the cellar, swirling around us. The girl's form flickered more brightly now, the fear lifting from her face. "Thank you," she cried as she reached toward the light, her small figure glowing fiercely against the dark. "Don't let go." With renewed determination, I pushed harder, forcing the shadows back with every ounce of will I could muster. The light grew, building a barrier that pushed against the darkness, fighting through their howls of despair. I felt the warmth in my heart, the fight against the malevolence that clung to these walls. In that moment, the bond we shared began to pulse, a thread of connection stronger than the darkness. The light surged, illuminating the entire cellar, cascading forth like a mighty tide breaking over the shores of despair. Shock gripped the shadows as they were pulled back, shrieking and retreating. I felt the presence of the girl strengthen next to me, her courage sparking with every note of the melody that infused the air. "I'll never forget," I said through clenched teeth, a promise solidifying in the air. "You will be free." The light exploded outward, filling every corner of darkness, illuminating the remnants of the past, the tumultuous memories of pain and loss. The shadows shrieked, their cries rising above the symphony of joy as the girl reached out, her hand brightening in the glow, transcending her trapped existence. And then suddenly, in a brilliant flash that nearly blinded me, I felt the connection snap. The dark shrieked one last time before disappearing, their disembodied voices fizzling into an unsettling silence. I blinked, disoriented, the cellar quieting back into stillness. As the glow faded, only the music box remained, the final note echoing softly. But the girl was gone, liberated, finally free from the chains of torment binding her to the world. Standing alone, I felt the remnants of pain dissipate, leaving behind pockets of light where despair had once lingered. But I knew better than to think it was completely over. A chill swept back through the air, an unsettling reminder that the house still held its secrets. What else lurked in the dark? What other spirits were trapped, waiting for someone to fight for them? I still felt the shadows lingering just out of sight, a reminder that this battle for lost souls was far from finished. With the echoes of the past still ringing in my ears, I took a deep breath, fortified by the experience, and ventured to the next room, willing to face whatever horrors lay in wait. I wouldn't be deterred. They deserved liberation, and I was determined to bring light to their darkness. With each step I took into the next room, uncertainty snaked around me like smoke. The air felt alive, charged with an energy that made my skin prickle. I moved cautiously, wanting to keep that warmth and light I had felt so fiercely just moments before, but the house seemed to unfurl before me like a dark wound, ready to bear its secrets. As I pushed open the door, it groaned like a wounded creature, revealing a parlor steeped in mottled shadows and an unsettling stillness. Dust motes danced in my flashlight beam, swirling like tiny spirits caught in an eternal waltz. The sense of mildew and decay wrapped around me, noxious and thick, nearly choking me as I stepped inside. The dark corners of the room felt conspicuously empty, yet I sensed eyes peering out from the gloom, watching my every move. A grand mirror hung crookedly on the wall, its edges tarnished, reflecting just enough light to catch my eye. As I glanced into its depths, I caught a flicker of movement behind me, a fleeting figure darting among the shadows. My pulse quickened. "Hello," I called, voice crackling with uncertainty. Silence answered, wrapping around me like an icy shawl. I turned slowly, scanning the room. Tattered drapes hung limply from the windows, and an old piano sat in one corner, keys yellowed with age. A single note echoed through my memory, a sound that resonated with ghostly familiarity. The timid sound of a child's laughter trickled through the air again, accompanied by a soft thump as if someone had dropped a toy. Drawing closer to the piano, I could almost see shadows flitting past it out of the corner of my eye. Was it just my imagination? I felt a shudder creep down my spine as I reached out to touch the keys. The moment my fingers pressed down, a mournful note rang out, clear and discordant. It reverberated, shaking the dust from the air and stirring something deep within the house. Suddenly, the lights flickered dangerously above, casting long, shadowy fingers against the walls. I jumped back, sensing the air grow heavy, oppressive. "Stay away," a voice hissed from the depths of the room, disembodied and low, sending chills racing along my arms. My heart pounded in my chest, its rhythm echoing my fear. A chill wrapped around my throat, and I felt as if icy fingers were closing in, squeezing tightly. "Bitch, who's there?" I stammered, trying to sound brave. I was answered by silence, pulling taut like a string ready to snap. My instincts screamed at me to run, to leave this room and never look back, but I felt an inexplicable compulsion to know who, or what, was lurking in this place. In that unsettling quiet, I caught glimpses of movement behind the other drapes. A shadow snapped sharply, and I caught an eye, a gleaming orb of darkness, larger than any creature I could imagine. My breath caught as it slipped back into the shadow. Surely, I wasn't alone. Suddenly, a chorus of whispers erupted, feral and hysterical. The sound cascaded through the air like a wave of lunacy. They swarmed my mind, serrated echoes of confusion and urgency. "She must leave. You will take her." They were calling for me, pleading, and mocking all at once. I staggered back, the dissonance of their voices curling around my thoughts as I strained to decipher their madness. The piano notes still rang in the background, blending eerily with the chaos. Something inside me urged a response. Perhaps that was the key to breaking their attack. "I'm here to help," I shouted into the shadowy room, desperation lacing my voice as I fought against the rising tide of fear. The whispers changed, becoming more frantic, rising and falling like the waves of an ocean storm. "Help us! Help her!" they cried, drowning out my thoughts, melding into a cacophony that pressed against my ears, shuddering my very being. The figure flickered back into view, this time clearer, an anguished visage of a girl, her face twisted in despair. "Don't let them take you," she rasped, her eyes wide with terror as she hovered near the piano, just out of reach. I could feel the weight of her fear, the desperation haunting her presence. "You must find the truth." "What truth?" I demanded, trying to keep the quiver from my voice. She pointed toward the mirror, her form shimmering, growing weaker. "In there, the answers are trapped. But be careful. They won't let you go." Her voice became a whisper, and she dissolved into the shadows, leaving only the echo of her plea. I swallowed hard, eyes fixed on the mirror. An uneasy feeling bubbled within me, a deep sense of foreboding mixed with determination. I edged closer, fearful but drawn by an unseen force, my heart thrumming wildly. Holding my breath, I leaned in, staring deep into the glass, its surface rippling ominously like the surface of water disturbed by a heavy stone. As I peered into the depths, the room behind me warped and twisted, dissipating into swirling lights. I felt as if I were being pulled through, the sensation both intoxicating and terrifying. In an instant, I found myself staring into a glimmering void filled with sorrowful memories twisted into grotesque forms. Images of long-forgotten faces, fragments of laughter now twisted into spiteful shrieks. My reflection was distorted, morphing into a nightmarish entity that shifted with each blink. My heart raced, caught between reality and nightmare, as the echoes of the past surrounded me. "You shouldn't have come here," they hissed, their forms swirling, knotting together like threads of a fraying tapestry. "This place will consume you." "The truth!" I shouted against the onslaught of shadows, gripping the edge of the piano for support. "Where is it?" The reflection within the mirror flickered once more, revealing scenes of old, families laughing, children playing, a glimpse of a forgotten life, and then chaos. Screams echoed, sorrow flooded the air, and darkness rushed in, swallowing everything whole. I saw the shift, the moment that laughter turned into screams of agony, the shift that condemned them to remain trapped in this limbo. Suddenly, a pair of hands reached out from the depths of the mirror, grasping for me. "Help!" they cried. They were cold, lifeless, filled with despair. I stumbled back, panic surging through me as I felt their cold grasp tighten, and the whispers rose to a fever pitch once again. "You must help us. You're the only one who can." I felt the energy drain as fears and doubts unnerved me, the shadows searching for an opening, a chink in my resolve. "Get away from me!" I shouted, my voice cracking but loud enough to try and break their hold. I focused, grounding myself in the memory of the little girl, the light she had shown me. "You can't take me!" The hands retreated slightly, but the shadows surged forth, swirling violently around me, pushing against the barriers of my light. The grip of the darkness felt suffocating, each breath a Herculean effort to keep from drowning. The music from the box surged again, a reminder of the warmth that had driven the darkness away moments before. My heart raced as I lunged back toward the piano, fingers flying across the keys in a desperate attempt to conjure that melodic magic once more. The notes rang out, a haunting harmony that wove itself through the chaos, binding together the fragments of my thoughts and dispelling the choking darkness around me. As the music resonated through the chamber, the shadows writhed, their grip loosening, and I felt the warmth push against the cold. Hope flared within me like a candle against the night. "You don't own me!" I yelled triumphantly, each note building in strength, filling the air with light. It was then I saw it, a flicker of movement from beyond the mirror. A figure emerged, shimmering in the musical light, encased in a glow that spoke of freedom and release. You have the power to break this cycle. The girl's voice rang clear once more, familiar, yet resolute against the howling shadows. You must believe. The light swelled, engulfing the room, wrapping around me, and I felt a connection threading through the memories and the spirits trapped in that mirror. With each note, I summoned their strength. With every beat, I called their light to fight against the darkness consuming their home. And just like that, I gathered the fragments of hope the faded faces held within me, challenging the darkness, willing its hold to falter. You will not take another soul, I shouted, light bursting forth with a radiant glow as the shadows shrieked, their cries fading into helpless echoes. The mirror flickered, and with one final, triumphant chord, the barrier within shattered like glass, splintering and erupting. The shadows recoiled, an abominable howl filling the room as I felt the pull of light sweep through me. I closed my eyes tight and clung to the sound, the music growing ever louder until it seemed to drown out even my heartbeat. And in that kaleidoscope of brightness, I could feel the spirits surge around me, weaving together in a bond far stronger than the darkness trying to hold them captive. Just when I thought I might break free, a surge of icy tendrils lashed around my ankle, desperate to drag me back into the abyss. No! I shouted, renewed determination flooding my voice. With a mighty push, I forced the light outward, creating a barrier against the darkness. The choking grip released slightly, just enough for me to feel the air fill my lungs and the music carry me forward. The darkness howled, a deep, resonating cry filled with despair, but I felt the spirits rising, their forms coalescing into shimmering figures illuminating the way. United, we surged together, and the shadows began to dissolve, scattering like ashes in the wind. As the last tendril of darkness disintegrated into nothingness, I opened my eyes. The parlor was still and quiet, freed at last from the grasp of malevolent forces. Breathing heavily, I took in my surroundings, unsure if I should laugh or cry at the battle I had just fought. Yet, the chill remained, the shadow of something hidden still lurking, waiting, reminding me that I was far from finished in untangling this web. I stepped back, my heart still racing with adrenaline and determination. What awaited me further into the recesses of this cursed home? My footsteps echoed softly as I prepared to move forward, knowing that each room held the potential for more ghostly encounters, more spirits waiting for someone to shine a light into their darkness. I took a deep breath and stepped further into the darkened hallway. The air grew thick again, anxiety wrapping around my throat. Shadows flickered at the edge of my vision, darting away as I illuminated the space with my flashlight. Each step echoed ominously, a constant reminder that I wasn't alone. A chill washed over me when I thought about what I had just fought against. I wondered if darker forces still lingered, waiting like wolves in the night. As I moved, I felt an almost magnetic pull toward an old door at the end of the corridor. The wood was warped and discolored, swaths of dark paint peeling away like layers of forgotten memories. I reached out to touch it, and a cold burst of air gusted out, sending a shiver racing down my spine. My instincts screamed to back away, but something urged me on, insisting I push the door open. I turned the knob slowly, and it creaked in protest, the sound echoing ominously through the empty space. The door swung wide, revealing a room that looked like something out of a twisted fairy tale, a playroom, yet shrouded in disarray. Toys lay scattered, their colors faded and their forms warped, as if time hadn't been kind. In one corner, a dusty rocking horse swayed slightly, even though no one was around to move it. I clenched my jaw, forcing away the spiral of dread trying to take hold of me again. In the middle of the room stood a small, ornate dollhouse, its windows blackened like soulless eyes watching me. I felt drawn to it, an odd mix of curiosity and fear fluttering in my stomach. As I approached, the air around it grew colder, and I could faintly hear the hum of a lullaby emanating from within, eerie and unsettling. I reached out to touch its painted exterior, and the moment my fingers brushed against the wood, the soft singing grew louder, wrapping around me like a creeping vine. The music shifted abruptly, the sweet melody twisting into a cacophony of discordant notes. My heart raced as I pulled my hand back, but it felt too late. The room pulsed, and shadows began swirling, dark shapes shifting from the walls, coiling around the edges of my vision. I could see faces, hollow, screaming faces, forming in the darkness, two-dimensional and terrifying. They were crying out in silence, their voices mingling into a terrifying symphony filled with pain and desperation. "Help us, please," one voice pleaded, echoing through the room, barely above a whisper, but powerful enough to freeze me in place. The shadows expanded and contracted, reaching out with tendril-like extensions that seemed to grow more lifelike with every beat of my heart. I stumbled backward, the dollhouse looming larger, the lullaby turning frantic as if sensing my fear. "Stay away!" I shouted, gathering every ounce of courage. But my voice wavered, uncertainty causing my resolve to flicker like a dying flame. The shadows drew closer, filling the room with a suffocating chill as the anguished faces twisted in agony. The lullaby morphed into a wailing shriek, all tethered to that cursed house, a melody of despair that made my skin crawl. In a jolt of instinct, I turned my flashlight toward the dollhouse, illuminating the windows and finding tiny figures within. They were dolls, disfigured and smiling maniacally, their eyes too wide, their painted lips stretched unnaturally. Horror clawed at my chest as they seemed to move. I blinked to dismiss the sight, yet they were still there, staring out at me, beckoning me to come closer. Moments stretched into eternity, and as I felt another shadow brush against my skin, a scream battled its way out of my throat. With a surge of adrenaline, I swung the flashlight around, trying to fill the room with light, but it felt like a futile gesture. Shadows writhed and shrieked in response, their cries escalating to a deafening roar. I backed against the wall as the dollhouse creaked open slightly, dark energy seeping out like some ancient curse released from its confines. Suddenly, a small doll, trapped in the chaos, tumbled from an open window of the house, landing at my feet. Its painted face cracked and crazed, eyes hollow and reflecting the chaos around us. I hesitated for only a moment before kicking it away, and the moment it hit the floor, the laughter of children echoed from every corner, sinister and mocking, reverberating through my bones. They were taunting me, a cacophony of spirits demanding to be seen. I was losing my grip on reality. This wasn't just a nightmare. I felt as though I was within a web, and the spiders were closing in. No longer just shadows. They were entities of darkness, feeding on fear and sorrow. That thought propelled me forward, desperation igniting my movements. I dashed for the door, heart pounding like a drum, unwilling to give in. Just as I reached the threshold, the shadows surged forward, a tidal wave of darkness threatening to pull me under. I fumbled with the door, hands shaking violently as I struggled to turn the knob. The shrieks reached a blaring crescendo, drowning out my thoughts. With a final, frantic twist, the door swung open, and I stumbled out into the hall, slamming it shut behind me just in time to hear the thud of countless bodies colliding against the other side. I leaned against the door, panting heavily, the frantic echoes of spirits crashing into the barrier I had created. A sudden silence fell, a heavy, unfamiliar quiet. I dared not breathe, every fiber of my being waiting for the first stir of those angry voices, the ominous scratching at the door to beckon me back. But then, amidst the tense silence, I thought I heard the faintest sound, a soft, gentle voice, almost celestial, breaking through the chaos. "You're safe," it whispered, soothing and sweet amidst the remnants of anguish. And somehow I knew it was the little girl, the light that had once shone through the darkness. The warmth wrapped around me, transcending fear, pulsing with an undeniable promise that the battle hadn't been in vain. Driven by heart, I opened my eyes, girded my mind against the shadows still lurking in the corners of this haunted place, refusing to yield further. I turned back toward the room, resolute as the weight of my resolve filled the air with a new sense of purpose. I will free you all, I vowed to the spirits, determined to return and fight for those trapped within these walls, to shed light upon the lingering darkness before it could claim me again. A single glimmer flared at the corner of my vision, a twinkle of light tumbling through the silence. I squinted, trying to focus as it flared larger, revealing shapes emerging from the depths, twinkling orbs of hope, fluttering gently around me like magical fireflies. Spirits entwined with their universal energy, creating a barrier against the shadows dancing just beyond my reach. I felt the connection deepen, resonating through my bones, promising that I wouldn't stand alone in this battle. I'm free, I thought, breath catching as I stepped back into the hallway, courage bubbling within me like the flames of a bonfire. I knew my purpose now. There were more souls to save, more chains to break. The house still harbored its darkness, but I would shine relentlessly, unyielding against the tides of despair. I set off, determination guiding my path, ready to uncover every secret this house had to share, ready to confront whatever horrors lay waiting, prepared to fight the darkness until it was no more.